welcome to Storybook, the Convos podcast. And I have Angelica here. She's my yoga master. So I've been taking yoga classes from her yoga factory. It's very good. You know, I've been taking yoga since long time ago. Since my son was I don't even remember. It was a long time ago. So now he's already
who's counting years?
Yeah. So it's been good. But you know, so there are so many movements that I still could not do. So I mean, yeah, it's a lifelong.
Hold the high vision.
All right. So all right, Angelica, would you please tell my audience about yourself, because I see that you doing tons of stuff.
Yes, I do many things. Who am I? Wow, that's a big question. I am an innovator, I'm a leader, I'm a creator, I am of service to the community, and I am all of those things through the vehicles of my businesses. How about that?
Wow.
That's my 30-second elevator speech.
Wow. Have you been practicing?
No, actually. But I think I do so many things and my hand is in so many places. I think I'm just like, I'm an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur of service.
Before I forget, because I have to say it, since, this 30-second pitch, it just reminded me of my training by NSR, like many years ago, when I was part of their social incubator, social enterprise incubator. So, and there's one organization that Angelica is also leading, Yoga Recovery PGH, and it's also fiscally sponsored by NSR. So yeah, we are sibling here. So. Okay, all right. So going back to Yoga Factory. So when did it start?
So I actually did not come onto the ownership team for Yoga Factory until October of 2022. Much more recent than my partner, Zeb Hamason, took over the business. Yoga Factory was Bikram Yoga Pittsburgh from about 2000. Well, he took it over around 2012. And now we are at 2024. So
wow,
moving right along. But it wasn't until October of 22 that we had talked about, taking the next step forward. And I had been teaching there for 7 years at that point, and also doing a lot of management work on the side. And so just based on both of our personal goals, that seemed to be the most logical next step. And as soon as we decided to do that, the owner of another school in Pittsburgh said, I am no longer going to be running my school. Will Yoga Factory please come help me and take over the space so that we can still serve the students there? And we were like, well, we're already jumping in both feet first, so we might as well go all the way in. Okay. And so we ended up with 2 studios.
So that's the place where I usually frequent in Squirrel Hill,
and that's
right?
where I met Will.
So,
which is it's been a fun adventure. Really watching the current, very long-standing Yoga Factory community builds and also kind of nourish and nurture this new little baby of ours and really build a fresh community there as well. So, yeah.
All right. So you mentioned Bikram, right? So that's the original hot yoga that I took that many years ago. And the first time I took it, I was like, what the heck? It's so hot. So I took that class. I remember there was a Groupon. I think there was a Groupon. So that's old, right? I took it in near Pasadena in LA, and so I was like, but then it was hot. But then it's like, this is easy because you don't actually have to move, and then you sweat. If you want to lose weight, just go to hot yoga.
go in
Just
the room,
do
sit
not
on the
leave
mat.
the room.
Yeah.
Do not leave the room. Right. So, but then then you do a lot of movement, and then you gain some flexibility. So, okay. Since I mentioned Bikram, so what happened to him? I mean, right? So I remember at one point that he was, all over the news, right? Having all this, the positive side, about his classes, and then his flashy lifestyle, right? And then something happened, and he just like, it's never mentioned again. All the store signs, all the school signs, they were like,
changing
gone.
name,
It's like almost like overnight, right? So is he still teaching?
Yes, he's still teaching and running trainings. I personally never met Bikram himself. Actually, it's kind of silly, but the first couple of years of my practice, I didn't know it was a person. So there you go. But when I did find out it was a person, then I, who is this person? Bikram was basically given the task by his guru, his teacher, Vishnu Ghost, to take this particular sequence of postures and bring it to the West. And so that is what he did. And he did. The postures that are in this sequence that we teach to the public, this 26 and 2 sequence, is part of a much larger series of postures. And so it's not like Bikram yoga, like it's not like he made up these postures, he carried them from a much longer tradition of hatha yoga. And so I think that number one is a bit of a misconception. It's not like his yoga, it's his particular method that he brought to the West so that it could be taught in a digestible format to the masses. And what happened to him, since I didn't meet the guy and I haven't witnessed anything myself, I can't say anything for certain, and I won't make assumptions one way or another. But I think what we tend to see in people in a position of power is that sometimes the ego takes over, and perhaps we make less than desirable choices in how we work with other people. And so I think I'll just kind of leave it at that place. The method that he passed down is extremely therapeutic. It has benefited hundreds of thousands of people. I truly believe in its benefits and on many levels. And so separating the name from that method and that sequence of postures, I think, the method itself, the yoga itself works, even if the man that brought it to us, may or may not be our most admirable leader.
Yep.
So
I completely agree with that on the about the benefits. I can tell you that I only recently tried to take the non-hot yoga from Yoga Factory, right? But then I systematically measure my blood pressure before and after, because I do have hypertension. And what I found, what I found was that for the hot yoga, my blood pressure, the top number could drop as much as 60 points.
Yeah.
And the lower numbers could drop as much as 30, 40 points.
Yeah.
It's like before and after. And of course, that I haven't taken all the variety of other yogas, but other kind of yogas probably drop only 10, 20 or none at all. But I found it's like miraculous. Like, if I can do hot yoga 8 times a day, I would not have hypertension anymore.
Yeah. Well, and the heat is a remarkable tool. It makes our muscles more supple. It promotes that detoxifying through the sweat. But at the same time, like all yoga, good yoga, and all yoga practice in some way, improves your circulation, improves your breathing, and that alone will benefit the blood pressure over time. So.
Actually, recently, my wife Sarah, also takes yoga from Yoga Factory, that she sent me one of those medical journal saying that just taking yoga, not hot yoga, just taking yoga over time, it'll drop, your hypertension by 10 to 20 points, so that's great. So going back to that, the Bikram the name has changed, right? So I see here hot yoga, right? And then I see people say 26 and 2. So is there any other name that either here or outside the country? So just in case people travel, so they know what to look for.
Yeah, all Bikram method yoga is hot, but not all hot yoga is Bikram method. So I encourage, if you're looking for this particular sequence of postures, to look for 26 and 2, or Bikram method versus like Bikram yoga. But that it's the series of postures themselves. Sometimes, and it happens all the time, a student will come in, oh, have you practiced hot yoga before? Oh, yeah. I'm like, where have you practiced? And they're like, oh, such and such a place. And I was like, oh, it's not the same. I was like, you might get an interesting awakening here. But yeah, so if you're looking for this particular method, I would more lean toward looking towards 26 and 2.
Okay. All right. So how many kinds of yoga out there? I mean,
there's so many.
Yeah. So, so far I have tried Yin, Slow Flow, from Yoga Factory, Rocket, Vinyasa, and yesterday the Vinyasa Flow. Right. Nice. And
branching out, Will. I like it.
Oh yeah. And I noticed that that it's like each yoga style, they target different muscles, and I was like, oh, this is new to me. I don't do this in hot yoga, and then so it's great.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah. There's so many different methods.
Right. And so many different names too, right?
So many different names too. And again, like all yoga, good yoga, I think as long as you're moving your body, moving it mindfully, focusing on your breath, and just getting on your mat, whatever that means. Right. And not every method is going to be for everyone. Like people are going to have their preferences, and I think that's great. But if you go, if you really look back, back to India, where a lot of these things started, and a lot of, teachers started passing their knowledge on to their students and to their students and to their students. I think we've seen diversification of what a yoga style actually is. And a lot of people over time have kind of, coined their own names for things and their own methods for things. I think that's fine as long as you're honoring the foundation where it all came from.
Okay. Yeah. So how did you get into yoga? So, and why yoga? I noticed in one of the video or introduction, but you also have formal education as you have master in psychology. So I'm wondering, why yoga? How did you so what motivated you? It's like, where's the switch?
So I was forced.
That's new. I've never heard that before.
So I've been a dancer since I was 5. And I went to college for dance, and it was spring semester of our junior year, and this little Scottish woman was the head of our department, and we were all super scared of her, even though she's like the best woman ever. And so we walked into advanced modern 305 or whatever it was, and she was like, okay, and there were only a couple of us juniors that were kind of with the seniors, so it was kind of a big deal. And first day we walk in, she was like, all right, you're advanced level dancers now. And so you need to be cross-training, and this is what you're going to do. And so she had arranged with a Bikram studio that was about 10 minutes away from the college for us to all go to a class together. And so my first yoga class was about 15 pre-professional dancers all in a room together. And so, of course, you can imagine like a bunch of pre-professional dancers were all like looking at each other and like who's going to kick their leg highest and all of that. It was very, very competitive environment. And I was very fortunate that the college actually paid for our membership to continue until we graduated. So 8 a.m. every Sunday. I got myself up because it was the only day I didn't have rehearsal super early. So I got myself up and I would go to a yoga class, and it really reset my body because I was dancing 8 to 10 hours a day. And just having that time for very similar to dance, just like controlled, mindful movement with very specific discipline, and technique behind it. Like it drew me right in. And so I went every single week until I graduated. And then when I graduated, I wasn't dancing 8 to 10 hours a day. I was in a small company for a while, but it was very, very part-time. And I was like, well, I need to move. Like I'm used to moving so much every day. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll try some more of this yoga thing. And so, once a week turned into 3 times a week, turned into every day. And here I am now. So it's funny because I think yoga used to kind of reset my body from my dancing. And now it's like my dancing has become like my little sweet oasis, while my yoga is like my everyday. So it has been a bit of a switch, but I still maintain both.
Okay.
So
yeah. And this is a bad habit of mine, as my wife, pointed out to me all the time. So sequencing the timing. So you were undergrad, right? Yoga. I mean, not yoga, dancing, and then you took yoga because somebody forced you. And then at what point that you decided to go to take psychology as a master?
So my undergraduate was in dance and psychology. I had a dual bachelor's.
I see.
And I went straight from undergraduate into my first master's program, which was in arts management. And I knew that I wanted to go back into my psychology studies at some point, but I didn't know when that was. And so I did my arts management degree. I managed a dance school for almost 12 years.
Oh, wow.
And I danced with the resident company there, Full Circle Dance Company. Shout out to my dancers. I miss you. And then I knew a year into practicing yoga that I was going to teach it one day. I just knew that.
Oh, wow.
I had started teaching the little toddlers when I was 14. So teaching's been in my life for 2+ decades now. And so I knew about a year into practicing this yoga that I was going to teach it one day, and I knew that it would come when the time was right. And so about 8 years into practicing, I decided, yep, it's time. I'm ready. And so I ended up doing my teacher training. And when I finished teacher training, Zeb, who's my current partner, he happened to have 2 full-time teachers that were moving out of state for various reasons. And I was at a point in my life where I was like, I needed a change, and the circumstances were right. And I was like, I guess I'll just move to Pittsburgh and teach yoga and see what happens with that. So I actually continued to manage that dance school remotely for a couple years while I was also teaching, and just kind of getting my feet wet as to what a yoga life looked like. And it was it was a year before the pandemic, actually, that I got the spark. I was like, I think I'm ready to make that shift now. So I had finally transitioned out of managing the dance school, and then I was like, yeah, I think I'm ready to see what else I can do with this yoga thing. And so the psychology just kind of naturally fed into that. Within 3 months, I was enrolled in Purdue. I move fast. When I make a decision, I'm in it 100%. So yeah, and then I finished my master's in May of 2022. And I was already starting to formulate the nonprofit during that time. And so here we are about 2 years later.
So knowing about the yoga, discipline and yoga, the benefits of it, and also knowing psychology, as a scholar. So is there any correlation between the two?
Yeah, I mean, I think my whole approach to the nonprofit is through the lens of mindfulness. And really, I think of mindfulness as just acute awareness of the self at any given moment, on an emotional level, mental level, physical level. And, you know, regardless of what you're struggling with or where you're at in your life, like, you can always be mindful about it. And so my whole psychology degree, it really just tapped me into how do I communicate well with people and how do I better understand people? I think that's really the whole science of it. And which absolutely applied, you know, to my customer service skills and my business skills, you know, in the first half of my career path. And now it's more turned into the therapeutic side of that. And so I think really the correlation there is that yoga is therapy first. And, you know, if you're mindful in how you approach your journey, you know, however much you're choosing to heal at any given moment, like if you're doing it mindfully, then you're doing it well. And so I think yoga is a really nice avenue to explore that because it tunes you into your body. And I think one of the first steps to mindfulness is, you know, getting in tune with where is my body in space at any given time. And even if you look at like the yoga system, a lot of times we use like asana practice or physical practice to tune into some bigger concepts of how is my mind in any given moment. Mm-hmm. And so I think the overlap really is just that mindfulness piece. Whether you're coming at it from, you know, the physical body or from the mental body, they very naturally overlap.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that the yoga is therapy first, and I know that the probably more people said this like in the past or probably in certain area probably, but probably not here in Pittsburgh, probably outside Pittsburgh, that the yoga is kind of like a religion.
Yeah.
That people are sometimes like they don't want to try. Like, no, I'm Christian. I don't want to do yoga. They're calling all this Sanskrit mantra, right? And right. So and they're not comfortable. Mm-hmm. So what would you say about that?
Yeah, and I mean, and we've had some students that get wary of hearing like, you know, chanting or mantra or anything like in classes like that. And really, I mean, it can be spiritual and not religious, right? And so I think that's where the disconnect is. I think whatever path you follow, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, you know, whatever it is, you know, yoga, you know, you're following a tradition. And I think we like to put things in specific camps, like, oh, this tradition, you know, bumps up against this tradition, or this tradition doesn't work with this one. And really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're following a historical path that others believed in a long time ago. And if those beliefs resonate with you, then great. The yogic system is a belief system. There are texts that are thousands and thousands of years old that, you know, it came from. And so they speak to me. If they don't speak to you, that's fine. But I'm going to honor, you know, where it came from and honor the practices that have been, you know, generations repeated. So yeah, I think if anybody's wary of practicing yoga because they think it's religious, like go back to, I mean, the Bible is how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, you know? It's like, it's the same thing with yoga. It comes from a tradition. It comes from history. So why do we have to, you know, slap a polarizing label on it?
All right, fair enough. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that you are not from Pittsburgh. So where are you from?
I'm from the other end of Pennsylvania.
Oh, Philadelphia?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, outside Philadelphia area. I grew up there. I went to college in Baltimore, Maryland, and I lived there for almost 11 years before I moved here after I trained. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So was it a big move?
I made the little triangle. Yeah.
Was it a big move, or was it, what do you think about
It was.
I
I had no connection to Pittsburgh other than I had a job ready for me and I really liked yoga and I was an open book and I'm like, okay, well, my life is going to take a new direction, so I'm just going to take the risk and do it. But it was a big deal. I had to, leave my dance performing company life, which was very, very hard for me.
Yeah.
My friends and the networks I built there, my original studio that I practiced at. So that was all hard to leave behind, but it just made sense.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. So going back to yoga, and now there's another thing that I saw on the side, that you're also practicing, or you're also doing Reiki, right? That's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
So what is that?
What is it? I know. You're like, what is that thing that you do? It's not wicked voodoo. I've had people be like, are you a witch? I'm like, no, it's not like that. So Reiki is it's an energy healing modality. And I was introduced to it by a friend of a friend during the pandemic. I think as the pandemic did to many people, it put us in a pressure cooker and made you deal with some of the stuff that's been simmering under the surface. And I was having a little bit of a rough time, and somebody suggested Reiki to me. Because even though I am a talk therapist now, I have never been good at talk therapy. And I was just like, okay, so I'm going to try this something else. And so I had my first session, and it was like, I felt like my body was somewhere else. Like I was having all these sensations and visions and colors, and my whole body was just like up and down tingling, and like just so many things were happening. And I was like, what is going on? And so I was like, well, if it's this powerful and having this effect on me, then I got to learn more about this stuff. So I received sessions pretty consistently for about 3 or 4 months. And then I was like, yeah, I want to practice this. I want to share this. This is really powerful. And I think it works. Cause I immediately just felt like a different person. And so I received an attunement, and very similar to yoga, it is a Japanese-based tradition that has been passed down over many generations from teacher to student. And I think that alone, just that methodology, really resonated with me, just coming from a yoga background. And so I had a teacher attune me. And so I started practicing on myself. And then I started offering sessions for other people just to, practice and see what the effects were. Mm-hmm. And I was finding that a lot of people like noticed immediate relief. And I was like, okay, like I can do this. I can make something of this. And I just really enjoy it. I think a lot of times I tell people it's like the therapy, you don't have to talk, which feels a lot safer sometimes. But it's so beneficial for mental health, for physical health, for chronic pain, for like trauma healing, for so many things. And I all of my clients are on every end of the spectrum. I've seen clients for so many different reasons, and they all they walk away feeling lighter, feeling calmer, feeling extremely relaxed. And I think that is a very similar effect to what yoga has on a lot of people. So I think I was drawn to that practice very naturally, just based on the path that I've been on. So
is it, to become a practitioner or a healer, do you need to have a gift? Or is it a trained skills, or is it a gift? It's an inherent gift.
It's a really good question.
Either you have it or you don't.
Yeah. I think everyone has a natural intuitive gift. I think everybody is born with that. But it takes a lot of really coming back to self and very acutely understanding self to be able to tap into that most effectively. I think anybody can practice. and anybody can. Reiki is based on the idea that it is a very universal energy we all have access to, that we're all united under. And the practitioner is really just the messenger. It's taking that universal energy, channeling through the hands, passing it on to the receiver so that they feel more in tune with that oneness. And so I think the more the practitioner is on a healing path, on a spiritual path, on a path of clarity of self, I think you're able to deliver more effectively. But that's not to say that, not anybody can learn it. And I think just like anything else, like the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Right.
So
I think just like an athlete, if you have, a good attendant, like a Usain Bolt, right? I mean, he can run, of course, because he's tall, right? But of course, probably if, Usain Bolt is 2 feet shorter, probably he cannot run that fast, right?
Exactly.
He's probably fast, but, the stride is not that long, right? So things like that.
Yeah.
All right. So talking about the, you mentioned about the practice from a teacher, and then there's a process of attunement. And then what about yoga? So there are many yoga places, here in Pittsburgh and anywhere in the world. So how would you know that, is there like some kind of known credential, right? Because you're twisting your body in some play, in some yoga style, in such a weird way. It's like, is it safe to do this, right?
Yeah.
So is there any credential that you have to pay attention
to? There's like one main credentialing agency, which is Yoga Alliance. And over the years, they have very much up-leveled their standards for what a quality training entails. And so, any good yoga training program is going to have, obviously, the anatomy. So yes, you can understand how to move the body safely and, in a coherent way that works with the body's natural alignment. Is going to have some background on where did we come from, like what is our tradition and why are we teaching it this way? And if, what postures are you teaching, they came from somewhere. So you need to understand where that came from. Just effective communication and how you speak with students, and a solid practice and a solid love and desire to pass on the practice that you already have. I've seen varying levels of teaching skills, and I can't speak to what everybody's training has been. All I know is that our teachers particularly have a pretty rigorous standard to uphold when they get employed to teach with us. And that's why I'm super grateful to them, because they hold a high vision, and they are all very, very talented in their own right, because they have done so many hours of study.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do they get their training from elsewhere, and then are they transferable, or how does it work?
So it's been interesting actually at Yoga Factory. I was the very first Yoga Factory teacher training back in 2016 was the first time Yoga Factory did teacher training. And so as the years have gone by, the teachers that now teach for us, the majority of them are actually Yoga Factory trained. And so it's been really cool to just see like the type of teacher that we are developing. But some of our other teachers trained with Bikram himself back when he was running trainings very regularly. And I think any training you do with somebody that's that close to the source, I think is a really valuable thing to do. I personally have somebody I train with in Ashtanga, and he trained directly with Pantabi Joyce, who was kind of like the one that brought this particular style to the West. And so I feel really confident about the training that I've received there. So I think to that point, like if you're training with somebody, who did they train with? And do you believe in how those individuals teach and practice? And I think that that will get you on the right path to knowing if you have a good quality training or not ahead of you.
And this training is specific, right? So there's a Bikram training, there's a Vinyasa training. Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, a lot of your teachers in the Yoga Factory, they teach variety of yoga. So which means they have to spend a lot of training hours.
Hundreds of hours. Yeah. Wow. And they love it. They love it.
Yeah.
I mean, part of what I love about our staff is that they love to learn, and that's kind of the teacher that we like to foster, is the one that's always a student.
So Yoga Factory does the teacher training also, you know, like the hot yoga, the Ashtanga. Okay, all right. You mentioned one name, Ashtanga, that, you know, so what are the differences between these names? You know, Ashtanga, Vinyasa, Bikram, and then there's Yin, right? So
there's all kinds of differences.
is there any like a major, you know, is it like a, I like to categorize things, right? So it's easy, right?
It's so much easier that way, right?
So how do you categorize it? I mean, is it based on the movement? Is it based on the temperature? Is great. I mean, that's by itself already separates it. Right? And there's hatha, right? Or
yeah, exactly. A lot of it is quality of movement and what's the word I wanted to use? Quality of movement and how you're working with your breath. Vinyasa is very movement and breath based. I mean, all yoga uses movement and breath. Right. Let me be clear about that. But in a Vinyasa class, you're more like flowing between postures. There's really not a whole lot of stillness in between. In a hatha practice, which the Beaker method is from, you know, hatha tradition, it's more you do a posture, you hold still. And then you do another posture and you hold still. In a yin practice, you're going to be doing much longer holds, which promotes very deep therapeutic stretching. So a lot of it is just, the differences in styles is just different in approach on how you're moving your body. Adding temperature, adding props, stuff like that is stylistic, and you know they each have their useful tools. But really, it comes down to like what is the method by which you are looking at the body and how it moves.
Okay. So what about Ashtanga?
Yeah.
Ashtanga is
very similar to the Ghosh lineage. So the 26 and 2 comes from a bigger series of 84 postures. Ashtanga very similarly, it's a set sequence. And there are several sequences. Most students will learn just the primary series of postures. And again, it's a set number of postures in a set series. And then you can go on to second series and third series and fourth series. And the postures get increasingly deeper over time. And so the idea is that, you know, you start with a more beginner-friendly series, one that's more universal to all bodies. And then there's the refinement from there.
And the Ashtanga is the refinement version of, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, note to self, I'm not going to take that.
Oh, it's fine. You'll be fine.
All right.
Fine.
Okay, so, I learned a lot, and I hope my audience also learned a lot about yoga and the variety of it, and not to be afraid of trying it out. Yeah. And now, we move from this. This is, I think, the foundation. What we're going to talk about next is the nonprofit that you have is the Yoga Recovery, right? But before I do that, let me share a screen here. Let me share a screen to the audience so they know where. Okay, so they're looking at that screen right now. So Lawrenceville, this is where this is the neighborhood where the original Yoga Factory, or not original, the primary yoga.
Yes.
Right here, so Lawrenceville, and we are here in downtown Storyburg, this particular office, and the Squirrel Hill one is here on Murray and
Forbes.
Murray and Forbes. Thank you very much. And what about the Lawrenceville? What is the Liberty? No.
On Penn Avenue.
Penn Avenue and
Penn and Butler.
Penn and
Avenue
Butler.
And Butler Street.
All right.
Yeah.
So those are the two yoga factories that we have, and let's talk about the yoga recovery. So, how, again, what made you created this yoga factory? What, what happened?
So every time I get asked this question, I'm always like a little bit fuzzy because it was one of those things that it kind of just happened.
So there's no 30-second pitch yet.
I don't have a 30-second pitch yet. I don't. So over the course of time in my yoga practice journey, I had a few people along the way that had confessed their struggles with addiction to me. And once I became a teacher, that started to happen more frequently. And I noticed that. And I noticed that they were being drawn particularly to the hot yoga series. And I think that just kind of planted a seed. And then when I got the itch to go back for my master's in psychology, I was looking up programs and I stumbled upon at Purdue that they had this addictions counseling focus. And I was like, huh. And I had always intended to go the clinical route. So I was looking in that direction, and then I happened to land on Purdue's site, and they had this fairly newer addictions track, and I was like, interesting. And so I read up on it, and immediately I was just like, that's it. That's the program. It just, for whatever reason, it just made sense. I have never touched a drug in my life. I have never had an alcohol problem. I have, addiction has not been a part of my journey, other than, being addicted to yoga and dance and all that stuff. But so it was interesting to me that just called to me right away. And so I finished my master's, and as I was towards the end of my master's program, and I did my practicum at a dual diagnosis clinic, and I was in an office setting every day from like 8 to 3 or 8 to 4, and I have never in my life had an 8 to 4 job. I've never had a 9 to 5 job. I've never had a 7 to 3 job, and I will never have that job. And so I knew if I'm going to do anything in this field, I got to be unconventional because this is not the environment for me. And so I just started like poking around, like, what can I do with this? And I, again, stumbled upon this training that was yoga for people in recovery. And it was called Y12SR, Yoga for 12-Step Recovery. And I was like, well, this is interesting. And so I was reading about that, and it was like a weekend-long training. So I was like, okay, like I'll do this little training thing. And I was like, yoga recovery, like I can make something of this. And so then I start Googling like website URLs like yoga recovery and blah, blah, blah. And so I bought the website domain, and I was like, all right, so what am I going to do with this now? And so it just kept, all the pieces just kept coming together from there. And so I graduated May of 2022, and June 1st, I had done the Y12SR training, and then I decided to start running those classes, and then those classes turned into, hey, I want to throw my Reiki practice on top of that, because I was about a year and a half into my Reiki practice, and everything's just kind of built from there. It's been a slow and steady and really sustainable growth over time.
Yeah, so it sounds like a combination of all these pieces, right? From the dance, and then go to yoga, and then you do this.
And from my arts management background.
That's right.
That it was like I was so grateful at that point to have that business experience, because it just made everything so smooth.
Right.
Right. And it was the first time I had really built something on my own from the ground up. Like I had managed things since I was 15 years old. I've been in some kind of a management role. And this was the first time that I really like built something like from the ground up. And it's been really cool to see that happen. Yeah.
So how are the the therapy sessions conducted? You know, or probably going back. So the 12-step recovery, you know, I mean, this 12-step is for alcoholic too, right? I mean, for addiction.
Yeah.
So how does it work? You know, how do you incorporate yoga and Reiki into this?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I was very much like, I have to work with only people in recovery for the first probably year or so. And now I've noticed that as I've kind of developed this mindfulness lens, that a lot of my language has shifted away from just recovery, and we're focused so much on how do we live mindfully. I do find that a lot of people in addiction recovery are attracted to that. So it's been interesting to kind of shift a little bit how I'm presenting the organization, even though it does tend to serve a very common population. So, but the classes, we do a very simple practice, probably a 45 to 50 minute practice, very simple postures. Generally, it's more of a slower vinyasa style class, or a more yin-based class where there's some, fewer postures, more stretching, a lot of breathing techniques in there. We pause after the asana practice to do a little bit of discussion on either a mindfulness topic or something from the yogic texts that relates to maybe the practice that we did. And then I conclude all of my sessions with a group meditation, and I channel Reiki for the group. That's kind of my little signature touch at the end of it. So all of my classes do incorporate that that meditation and that therapeutic piece to it. And then separately, I do one-on-one sessions, either just a full Reiki treatment, or I've actually been working in some more customized sessions that include a little bit of brief talk therapy and the Reiki together, which has been really effective, actually. So,
is this the same organization? I think I remember. Just correct me if I'm wrong. Also works with the formerly incarcerated people.
It is not.
It is not. All right. Yeah. Okay.
Although I'd be more than happy to accommodate. Yeah, I would love to branch out and have more people try it out.
Okay. All right. So I must have been talking to somebody else.
Oh, good.
All right. So for this yoga recovery, for this 12 steps, how do you advertise? How do you let people know, and how do you promote this?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate that I've had when I first started practicing Reiki in person, I was actually practicing at another wellness center, and so I built a little bit of a clientele from that. And so between that and between the yoga schools and having the privilege of being able to host my classes in an actual studio space, in addition to your website, your social media, all the normal channels, right? And a lot of word of mouth. I think a lot of people that, particularly, I find people that are on a recovery path, they like to let other people know in their circle about safe spaces where they can feel welcome and process their recovery in a non-medical setting or a structured, setting like that. I think people are really looking for more holistic methods that give them clear, concrete steps to practice. And so a lot of word of mouth as well.
Okay, I think also the style, not the style, but it gives them a choice, right? I think it's a part of motivation. I think a lot of things work if they're motivated to do it, right? And this is one way that, it's not mandated by their physicians or by court or by whatever, by their parents, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And people can come and go as they please. It's always an open, welcoming space. There's no judgment. We're just here to move our bodies and see if we can be better people.
So do you have your own space, or do you actually use Yoga Factory?
My classes right now are conducted at Yoga Factory in Lawrenceville. I do also teach occasionally at halfway houses around the community. And so I would love to bring those classes more out away from the studio setting. But right now, primarily, I hold those classes twice a month in Lawrenceville.
Okay. Yeah. So how did you approach those halfway houses? I mean, how do you convince them that, hey, this is...
Yeah. When I finished my master's, I was a little hustly go-getter, and I was like, hey, I just did this thing, and I'm really excited about it, and I want to offer yoga to all of your communities. And, a lot of them are like, I don't really have the money to pay you for that. But but a couple have, taken to that, which has been really rewarding. And honestly, I think it's interesting teaching in those settings because there is so much focus on just physical and mental and emotional regulation. And so I find that in those settings, just even the simplest attention to a breathing exercise is like mind-blowing because they haven't been given those tools in an incarcerated setting or in a medical facility. Like they're not taught those things, And so I think there is so much benefit to practicing breathing and meditation and visualization and connection to the body, like earlier into the recovery process. Like most of the people I teach are kind of further along that line. But the earlier you are in the recovery process, you're so malleable at that point. And I think if we can incorporate breathing, meditation, stillness, and mind-body connection way sooner, I think there would be astronomical benefit going forward.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree with that. And I think in the generality that, we need to start young, probably even before they get into the recovery, right? Probably in a school age.
Exactly.
Right? Especially those teenagers with such a high hormones, right? So.
Well, and the world we live in is constant stimulation. Like we are stimulated on every level all the time. And there is such a lack of understanding of how to regulate the body and regulate the nervous system. And we have a lot more control over that than we realize. And I think, absolutely. I think we should be starting them way younger. Yeah. Way younger.
That's an idea for a nonprofit. Yeah. There you go.
I was going to do it.
All right. So let's go to the, show the audience about your webpage here for the Yoga Recovery. All right. Is there anything that you want me to click and so you can go over that? What is the up and coming thing?
So I think you should click on that retreat stage. Yeah.
This one? All right.
This was something I never really thought I would do, but I am. My partner Zev and I have run a number of retreats together, yoga retreats together, both national and international.
So retreat means a weekend, or is it a week? Okay,
weekend. It's like a couple days away.
All right.
And so I paired this with the idea of, in a clinical setting, there's this idea of like a marathon group wherein you come together with a group of people for a very specific desired outcome, and you that's all that you do for like a given period of time. And so it puts you in this mini intensive incubator to hopefully come out transformed. And that very much, ironically, is a lot of how we train our teachers is in that intensive immersive format. And I think it's hugely transformative when you can take a step back from your normal day-to-day and just be super hyper-focused on one particular aspect of your life. And what do you really want to get out of that? And so these mini retreats are based on that concept. Let's take a step away from the hustle of life, go a little remote into a very nature-happy venue, really just connect with our simplest, most bare bones living space and just focus on ourselves for a couple days. And so during these retreats, we practice yoga. We have meals together. We usually do one like featured workshop that's focused on some aspect of living more mindfully. My friend Haley, shout out to Haley Jane out there. She has been a wonderful partner for me in hosting some sound baths and different kind of meditations. And then you come out of the weekend just feeling really refreshed and just feeling like, okay, I have some things that I really want to focus on for myself. Every retreat has been different. Every little grouping has had its own little unique experience. Mm-hmm. It's been such a joy to host those. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How big is the group typically?
I keep it to 10 or fewer people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just so it's like, it's big enough that we can actually, have some kind of group dynamic, but it's small enough that it doesn't get to be, too many hats in the ring. So yeah, I like to keep it pretty intimate.
Where's it held? I know probably it's on the website, but...
I have hosted it at pretty much a different venue every time. I'm trying to, support multiple places and also just test out a bunch of different places to see what resonates the most. The next one is November 1st through 3rd at Antiochian Retreat Center, which is about an hour or so away. We were most recently at River Mountain. We will be back at Lawrenceville Retreat Center, which was the first place we hosted and has been a consistent one for us in March of 25. So, yeah, already planning ahead.
All right. So you mentioned that after usually when people are done with the retreat, they feel fresh, rejuvenated. Yeah. And do you advise them to retake the retreat in the future, or how,
Absolutely. And
is it like a refreshing kind of thing?
Yeah. And we've had, there's a couple people that have been almost every single one, and that's been really cool. And then we get some new faces that are just in and out, and they just need that kind of like one-time reset. But yeah, absolutely. I think anybody can benefit from taking just 48 hours, that's it. Just take a step back, reset. Where's my life right now? What do I actually want to be focusing on right now? Okay, now I can step back into my reality level. Okay. I think anybody can benefit from that.
So it's kind of, contradiction in a way that you're busy.
Yes.
And then you take 2 days off, but not really off because it's quite intense, right? It's quite, right. I guess, intense in a way that, your brain is being rewired, right?
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
This is what you did, so this is what you should do in the future, and this is how, right?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And so do you have any advice for other people right now, for my audience, like about, things that you do and things that you believe in, for them to be better in their life?
How to live more mindfully. that is my whole motto, right? I think there's, what is the Viktor Frankl quote? There's a gap between stimulus and response, right? And it's within that little gap that we have a lot of power. We have a lot of choices to make in that little half-second gap. And I think number one is recognizing that you always have a choice on how you approach things, that you are only responsible for yourself at any given time. You cannot change people. You cannot force anything. It always goes back to you. And I think that's... how I really operate now is very much, I always redirect my behavior and my thought patterns and my emotions to myself. And I do that through the lens of curiosity. Something that I've been pushing on the trainees that we're actually working with right now is to stay curious. Like, what is that reaction teaching me? Or what is this emotion actually showing me? Or why did I have that very interesting interaction with somebody, rather than focusing on the anger, the resentment, and all that surface stuff. It's just like, wait a second, let me be curious about that. Like, how can I, like, what information can I get out of this experience? And that has really helped in a lot of ways, just being curious.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's hard to follow, but yes, I think it's great thing. You know, you can imagine when you're angry, you want to respond right away, right?
You know, life is a practice. Nobody's going to get it perfectly, right?
That's right.
It's
you know,
like,
and I hope that all politicians hear what Angelica just said. Yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Angelica. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you
it's my
so
privilege
much.
to have
so
you.
Fun.
All right. Great.